it is your responsibility if you hope to enjoy the freedoms that you have previously enjoyed. And if you hope to sustain those freedoms for your kids and your grandkids. The reality is that these freedoms aren't going to be taken away from us, that we're not going to live in a time where we're subject to a king or anything like that. But the reality is we might come into a situation where our children are. Do you want that for your kids? Do you want that for your grandkids? Unless you wake up, it's not going to happen. It is Friday, July 5th, 2024, and if you are one of my American brothers, we are on the back of our celebration of independence, July 4th, and if you're one of our Canadian brothers to the north, you're a few days away from your celebration of Canada Day on July 1st. So first and foremost, happy Independence Day, happy Freedom Day, however you want to state it. We are living in amazing times. And I know I complain a lot. I know I like to point out all the things that are going wrong in culture and society, but we do live in pretty incredible times. And we are so blessed and so fortunate to be the benefactors of those individuals who fought for our freedoms and our liberties and our pursuit of happiness. And that's what I want to talk with you about today. I want to talk about rights. We, as our founding fathers have said, are bestowed with certain unalienable rights. That is primarily the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We've been afforded these opportunities. These aren't opportunities that we earned ourselves. And we live in times where people are increasingly forgetting about that. They believe, most people, I think, believe that we are entitled to these rights. And although our Creator has bestowed upon us these unalienable rights, there are things that we need to do to make sure that we continue to secure these rights. That is the problem of modern times. So many people believe that just because we can pursue happiness, that we're entitled to health care or we're entitled to a quote unquote livable, workable wage, or we're entitled to housing. That isn't what the founders intended. What the founders intended is that we are able to pursue those things with equality, with a level playing field. And America, to be fair, hasn't always lived up to that ideal, but we are closer, I believe, than any other nation throughout all of human history to realizing and accomplishing that dream. But it isn't anybody's responsibility to ensure that you continue to enjoy the benefits that you and I didn't earn. I would say as you're celebrating this weekend, the 4th of July weekend or Canada Day weekend, however it is dubbed or termed, that we remember to spend time with our family and friends and our loved ones, celebrating righteously the freedoms that we enjoy. But what I do want to make sure that I acknowledge and share with you today is that there is an inextricable connection between the rights that we enjoy and the responsibility that we have. Too many people have forgotten that there's an associated responsibility with the rights that we have. They just believe because they've enjoyed their entire lives the rights that somebody else afforded them, that they're just going to, in perpetuity, have that. Guys, unless we as men are willing to step up and take responsibility for our livelihoods, for our well-being, for securing those rights, both foreign and domestic, those rights will slip away. And I've had the thought as an American that there's no way that can happen. Well, it's just ignorant. Look at all of cultures, the greatest civilizations that the world has ever known. And most of them, 99.9999% of them, have fallen. And part of the reason they fall is because they have no longer been able to secure the rights that they established for themselves. This is the crux of what it means to be a sovereign man. In 2016, I wrote a book called Sovereignty for the Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. And in it, I lay out the idea of responsibility for your own life. Men, we have a responsibility to be protectors, to be providers, to preside, which is synonymous with leadership, over and for people that we love, people under our care, people who are unable to do it for themselves. And unless we as men step up, we're going to see these rights dwindle. slowly in some cases and drastically in others. And don't for a second think that just because America is the powerhouse that it is, that there can't be just some moment in time that threatens that. We saw that on 9/11. Now, granted, that wasn't a direct threat to our democracy necessarily, but it was a warning shot across the bow that said, you are not invincible. You have vulnerabilities, and we ought to take that seriously. I think we did then. I wonder how seriously we take it now. Guys, your job as a man is to be a protector, a provider, and a presider. And unless you're doing what you need to be doing by becoming a sovereign man, you are not doing your family justice. You are not doing your community justice. You are not doing the people under your care justice. What we need to do is we need to go out and make ourselves healthy individually. We need to go make ourselves financially free. We need to make ourselves strong mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. We need to find out ways to serve the people under our care. We need to lead our children in righteousness, moral clarity, and thought, and take responsibility for our own shortcomings. That isn't fun. It isn't enjoyable to recognize that you individually and personally have deficiencies. It isn't always fun and enjoyable to recognize that your city or town or village or province is as good as it could be. It isn't as good to acknowledge that maybe you don't have the close friend circle that you ought to, but unless you're willing to acknowledge the truth that we don't have everything figured out, that we do have vulnerabilities and we do have areas for improvement, then we will never improve. We've spent centuries at this point resting on the laurels, the coattails, riding the coattails of other people. And it's been wonderful. And it will be wonderful until it isn't. And this is a little bit like me proclaiming the sky is falling, but in this case, it is. We see it, right? You see it. If you're somewhat aware, you acknowledge it. You see this threat to our freedoms. You see this quote unquote free nation and the restrictions and rules and regulations. You see the power struggle between corporations and oligarchs and lifelong political actors, all vying for power and control over you. These people don't care about your freedom. They don't care about your well-being. They don't care about your life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They care about their own power. And they wield those phrases and the founding documents of this country, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, as a tool to amass more power. And it's like that old adage of the boiling frog in the pot. Now, we don't know how true it is, right? That's been called into question. But the adage is that if you put a frog in medium temperature water and gradually heat it up, that he'll stay in there just long enough to cook himself to death. Or death by 1,000 cuts, if you will. It doesn't seem significant in the moment, but you start adding up all these little things, the Patriot Act and the way taxes are structured, from the implementation of income tax to the implementation of property tax, even things that are taxes like registration fees and those sorts of things that aren't quote unquote called taxes, but actually really are. These things add up, and your freedoms are being taken away from you right before your eyes. And you cheer for it. You celebrate it because you're not a sovereign man. So when the government comes in to pay off your student debt, you're excited about it because you're an idiot and ignorant about the fact that it really wasn't the government that did anything at all except for steal from the common man to pay somebody else. You see it when you're taxed to death, literally. You pay taxes when you make money, and on that money you made, you pay another whatever percent of sales tax. And on all of that money that's left over, you pay registration fees and fines and this and that. And then on top of that, when you die, you're taxed again. So your beneficiaries don't receive the money that you worked for your whole life. This isn't sustainable. And as much as I would like to just reap the benefits of somebody else's effort, we don't get to do that for very long. As I said earlier, there is an inextricable connection between the rights that we enjoy and the responsibilities that we have. And so I would ask yourself, if you're an honest, righteous, moral man, where are you failing to take responsibility for yourself, for your family, for your community, for your neighbors, for your country? It's easy to say, oh, somebody else will do it. It's easy to say, that's not my responsibility. Well, you know what? It is your responsibility. If you hope to enjoy the freedoms that you have previously enjoyed, and if you hope to sustain those freedoms for your kids and your grandkids. The reality is that if you're roughly my age, I'm 43 years old, that these freedoms aren't going to be taken away from us, that we're not going to live in a time where we're subject to a king or anything like that. But the reality is we might come into a situation where our children are. Do you want that for your kids? Do you want that for your grandkids? Unless you wake up, it's not going to happen. We are so selfish. Look at Social Security. Look at Medicare and Medicaid. We are so selfish. These systems are broken. And our only response is, well, I paid into it for all these years, so I'm going to get mine out of it. Now, that might be true. You may have. You may have paid into it for years, and you may want yours. You may be entitled even to yours. Or you could do the right thing and say, you know what, I'm more worried about our future generations. And so maybe I'm going to start saving money myself. Maybe I'm going to worry about retirement. Maybe I'm not going to go to school, college, for example, and let other people pay my way. Maybe I'm not going to take the handouts that the government so readily wants to give you, thinking they're free. They're not free. They come with strings attached. Whether you pay for it or future generations do, somebody's going to pay the piper on that one. And that's your fault. And that's my fault if I'm unwilling to do anything about it. So guys, as we eat our hot dogs and wolf down those hamburgers and drink a few beers here and there this weekend, man, don't just let it go to waste. Think about what you're going to do about your life. Get in shape. Get out of debt. Learn marketable skills so you can make more money. Give back to your neighborhood. Mow your neighbor's yard. Reach out to a widow in your community who doesn't have anybody around. Go coach a sports team so a young man who doesn't have a father in his life can learn from a man like you what it means through the game of baseball or football or basketball or lacrosse or whatever it might be. Serve in your community. Sit on city council. Sit on the school board. Run for mayor. Run for city council. I may have already said that one. But get involved in the way that you know how and stop letting yourselves be corrupted by other people who are corrupt and they're bad actors. They're either bad actors, evil, or ignorant. We cannot tolerate that anymore. We've got a president in office right now who would love nothing more than to amass power for himself and his family. We cannot tolerate that. We cannot allow that to happen. Many of us have elected representatives who are no longer serving the people. They're serving themselves. And so those people need to be voted out of office. Those people need to be replaced. Those people need to be revolted against in the mediums that are available to us as citizens with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And anybody that stands in our way of doing that ought to be acknowledged and ought to be dealt with. Guys, it's very, very important that we continue to maintain our rights. It's not enough that somebody 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 250 years ago believed enough to pay the ultimate sacrifice for acknowledging and restoring these rights to us, the American citizen. We actually have to do something about it. So, enough talking on social media about how amazing this country is. I get tired of seeing what I would call patriot porn, where everybody's putting up their flags and shooting their guns and their fireworks. And that's all fine and great. I have no problem with that. But without any substance or weight behind it, it's meaningless. I don't really care about the flag. The flag is a piece of cloth. It's what it actually means, what it represents, and what we as people are willing to do about it. I don't care about the fireworks and the celebrations if it means nothing because we're not doing what we're celebrating in the first place? Take responsibility, guys. And know, again, as I said earlier, there's an inextricable connection between the rights that our founders acknowledged and that God has bestowed upon us and our responsibility to uphold them. And when we find the correlation between the two and we do something about it, then we can look our children in the eye and say, we helped secure those rights for you. You aren't entitled to them. Yes, we call them rights, meaning God has given those to us, but we are not entitled to them. People at every turn will attempt to take those rights from you for their own selfish pursuits and desires. You cannot allow that to happen. Let's become sovereign men. That is the work that we've been doing here for the past almost decade now. Teaching you to become sovereign, to not rely on big daddy government, to not rely on the financial institutions, to not rely on formalized education or academia or big pharma or corporations in general, but to rely upon yourself and your neighbor and your community members and your brothers and sisters and the people who are close to you, that we can lock arms, shoulder to shoulder, step by step, reclaim the freedoms that this country once enjoyed. It isn't easy. It isn't comfortable. It's hard work. It's not going to be figured out by this podcast or by posting some cool or clever phrase or funny meme about 4th of July on Instagram. Enough with the bread and circuses. Let's actually do something about it. Not only on the 4th of July and the 4th of July weekend, but every single day. What can you do to acknowledge the American dream and restore the American dream for yourself and for future generations? Guys, we've got a lot of work to do. And I would encourage you to share this episode with another man or woman you think might need to hear it. I would encourage you to share this with the world. Let people know what you stand for, that you believe that there's a connection between rights and responsibilities, that you believe it's our moral obligation to be righteous, to do good work, and to make ourselves free, not just hope that we are. All right, guys. With that said, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the freedoms that you now enjoy, but remember, they're not here forever unless we're willing to do something about it. That's all I've got for you this weekend. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy your freedom. Let's keep fighting for it. We'll be back next week. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.